This ought not to be given away, and the men who live by it will not thank me for saying it aloud. There is a habit common to nearly every man who has assembled a fortune of any consequence in this country, and it is not industry, and it is not talent, and it is not luck. It is that at some early point in his life, he trained his mouth, and the crowd has been taught the exact opposite. The crowd believes an ambition is not real until it has been announced, that a man ought to tell his friends so they may hold him to it. That confession is courage. I am telling you tonight that it is the most expensive habit a poor man owns. Here is the law, and I give it to you in one sentence so you cannot mistake it. Whatever you say aloud, you hear, and whatever you hear repeatedly, your subconscious mind accepts and records as a settled fact. Your own ear is a channel straight into your own mind. Speech does not merely describe your ambition. Speech either feeds it or poisons it, and there is no third possibility. So, be silent, not forever, not about everything, about 5 things. I shall give them to you one at a time, in their order. And I warn you now that the 5th has cost men more money than the first 4 combined, because the 5th arrives disguised as good news. You have talked yourself out of more money than you have lost by every other means in your combinations. Life. And you have never once suspected it. Part 1. The Law of the Closed Mouth. There was a dinner given at a private club in New York on an evening in December, at which some 80 men of great means were present. No reporters were admitted, no stenographer took it down. Not one line of what was said that night appeared in any newspaper the following morning, and to this day no complete record of it exists. A young steel man rose at the end of that dinner and spoke for something under 2 hours. He had prepared no manuscript. He described to the men in that room an industry organized as it had never been organized before, and he described it as a thing already standing out of that closed room and that unrecorded speech came the largest corporation the world had yet seen.
Real quick, I just want to speak from the heart for a second. Thank you. I mean it. You showing up here over and over is the reason I get to do what I love. And I never want that to become something I take for granted. Whether life is treating you kindly right now or you're going through one of the harder chapters, I'm just really glad you're here with me. We found each other for a reason, and I don't say that lightly. By the way, if that free sheet's still sitting there undownloaded, grab it now. I made it because I think it can genuinely help you. No rush. Mostly, I just want to say I'm grateful you're here.
The young man was Charles M. Schwab. The corporation was the United States Steel Corporation, capitalized at more than $1 billion, and that was in a day when $1 billion was a figure most men could not hold in their heads. Now, I want you to notice what nobody notices about that story. That speech reorganized American industry, and it was never published, not because it was shameful, and not because it was secret in any criminal sense, but because it was never meant for the crowd. It was meant for the 11 or 12 men in that room who could act upon it. The rest of the world read about the result some weeks later when the thing was done. That is the pattern. I have found it in the life of every man of substantial achievement. I have examined over more than 20 years of study, and I have examined more than 500 of them. The crowd cannot fund you. The crowd cannot hire you. The crowd cannot build with you. The crowd can do one thing only, and that is have an opinion, and it will give you that opinion free of charge in unlimited quantity on any subject whatever, whether it possesses the faintest qualification or none at all. Men who build tell the few, to the many they say nothing. The mechanism, let me give you the machinery underneath this, because I do not ask any man to obey a rule he does not understand. Every impression that ever reaches your subconscious mind reaches it through the principle of autosuggestion, which is to say, through impressions you have accepted and passed along yourself. No suggestion from any outside source has ever influenced any human being until that person took it up and admitted it. That is why I say the responsibility is entirely yours and there is no one left to blame. And your own voice is the shortest route into your own mind that exists. Consider what most men say about money in an ordinary. Weak. I'm just trying to stay afloat. Things are tight right now. I'd love to, but you know how it is. I'm trying to get out of debt. Say that last one 50 times in a year, and a man in difficulty will say it far more often than 50 times and understand exactly what you have done. You have described a man in debt aloud, in your own voice, with feeling, 50 times, to the one mind in the universe that is obliged to take your description as a specification and go to work upon it. The subconscious mind will not remain idle. If you fail to plant desires in it, it feeds upon whatever reaches it as a result of your neglect. And nothing reaches it more reliably than the sound of your own complaining. Now, the second half of the mechanism, the conscious mind stands through all your waking hours as a sentinel at the door, examining every suggestion that arrives from outside and passing or refusing it. That is nature's arrangement for protecting a human being against intruders who would otherwise take possession of his mind at will. It is a wise arrangement. But a man who talks freely about his affairs has propped that door open and invited every passerby to walk in and rearrange the furniture. The confession. In 1938, I set down a long conversation with the adversary of all men, in which he confessed the means by which he takes possession of a human being. He was frank about it, because he knows that 9 men in 10 will hear it and change nothing. He said his easiest entry is through a man's willingness to let other people do his thinking for him. The drifter, he said, has no opinions of his own worth the name. He carries about the opinions of whoever spoke to him last, and he mistakes them for his own convictions. Now think what an announced plan actually is. It is a formal invitation to other people to think on your behalf. You have laid your purpose on the table and asked the room what it makes of it. And every man in that room will answer out of the limits of his own experience, which is the only place any man's opinion has ever come from. They are not wicked. They are loyal. I want to be fair to your friends, because they are not villains, and I will not have you leaving here suspicious of people who love you. When your friends discourage you, they are not attacking you. They are defending the old picture of you out of genuine affection. They knew that man. They were comfortable with him. They had a settled idea of what you were and what you might reasonably expect, and they liked that man perfectly well. Then you announce a larger man, and every one of them kindly, gently, with real fondness, over coffee will begin to argue him back down to a size they recognize. Are you sure? Isn't that a bit much? What about the children? So-and-so tried that and it ruined him. Every objection is a hole shot in a plate you handed them yourself. And here the ghost has done its work, the fear of criticism. It robs a man of initiative. It destroys his imagination. It limits his self-reliance, and it does the whole of its damage before he has taken one single step. He does not fear what people said. He fears what they will say. And so he does not act, and so he is never criticized, and so the whole arrangement is confirmed. Very well. Then let us be exact. 5 things. And the first is the one you have been trained your whole life to shout. Part 2. The first silence. The amount. The definite sum is the foundation stone of this entire philosophy. Not more money. There is no such object in the universe as more money, and the machinery of achievement cannot fill an order that has no figure on it. The exact sum, written, fixed, with a definite date for its possession and a definite statement of what you intend to give in return, for there is no such thing as something for nothing in any transaction a man ever makes with life. I have taught that for 20 years, and I will teach it until I die. And precisely because that figure is sacred, it is not conversation. What a man actually hears. When you name a large sum to an ordinary man, he does not hear a plan. He hears a verdict on himself. Understand this, because it explains nearly every discouraging conversation you have ever had. Name a figure larger than a man privately believes possible for himself, and you have insulted him without intending it and without either of you knowing it occurred. He now has 2 ways to restore his comfort. He may enlarge his own idea of what is possible, which is difficult and painful, and requires him to account for the years he has spent, or he may cut your figure down to a size that lets him breathe. He will cut your figure, almost every time, and he will do it with a laugh and a friendly hand on your shoulder, and he will believe he is doing you a kindness by keeping your feet on the ground. The clerk with the impossible store, there was a young man clerking in a dry goods store in the state of New York who had an idea. His idea was a store in which every article was priced at 5 cents or 10 cents and nothing higher. He talked about it. He described it to men who had been in retail merchandising for 30 years and who knew the trade far better than he ever would. They laughed at him. I want you to understand that their laughter was not malice. It was the honest report of men whose imaginations were smaller than the idea in front of them. They had never seen such a store. Therefore, no such store could exist. That is not stupidity, that is the ordinary operation of the human mind, and you will meet it every time you carry a new thing into an old room. He built it anyway. His name was F.W. Woolworth, and before he was finished, there were 5 and 10 cent stores in every town of consequence in America, and he had a fortune out of it, and he put up a building in New York that people came from other states to look at. Their laughter cost them nothing whatever. It would have cost him everything had he accepted it. The finer damage is a time. Now there is a subtler injury here that I want you to see, because it is the one that actually does the killing. A man names his figure to a skeptic. The skeptic makes a face. Nothing dramatic, perhaps only a small movement of the eyebrows. And the next time that man names his figure, he names it apologetically. He hedges it. He softens it. He prefaces it. I know it sounds crazy, but this probably won't happen. But don't laugh, and the plate records the apology, not the figure. He has begun asking permission for his own ambition, and a man who asks permission has already submitted the matter to a vote he is going to lose. The instruction right, the sum. Read it aloud twice daily to yourself in a closed room with the door shut. That is the only audience the figure requires. It has never required another, and I have never once found a case in which telling the neighbors added $1 to the total. And now the second, which is more dangerous still, because it is the one men are proudest to explain. Part 3, the second silence, the plan. There was a body of men some years ago who had determined to do a thing for which the established penalty was hanging. They were not fools, and they did not intend to hang. So for months they did their work through private correspondence and closed meetings. Letters passed between them that were meant for one pair of eyes.
Let me make you an offer the old teachers never could. For the price of lunch, I'll walk you through 14 days of the exact auto-suggestion ritual, a daily money decree, the identity work, all of it, to pull your first unexpected $100 into your life. And that 100 isn't the point. It's the proof these teachings actually work. If nothing shows up, you pay nothing. That's the 14-day money magnet protocol. Test this law on your own life. Go to the second link in the description.
Rooms were shut. Nothing was announced. Nothing was published. The thing was organized in total silence, while the men who would have destroyed it went about their business unaware. And when the decision was fixed and the document was drawn and there was no longer any possibility of retreat, then, and only then, did 56 men put their names to it in public, every one of them knowing exactly what it might cost him. It cost several of them everything they had. They were the signers of the Declaration of Independence, and the correspondence that preceded that morning is one of the great lessons in the conduct of a serious purpose. Organized in silence, announced when finished. That is the order. In every enterprise of consequence, that is the order. And reversing it has destroyed more sound ventures than every depression this country has ever had. Why plans in particular? A plan in its infancy is a fragile thing, and I want you to understand precisely why. It has not yet been tested. The man holding it cannot yet defend it, not because it is unsound, but because it has not yet met the world and been corrected by contact. Therefore, any competent-sounding objection appears to defeat it. Some fellow at the table who has never built anything says, "But what about the freight cost?" And you have no answer, because you have not got that far. and the whole thing suddenly looks childish to you in front of company. It was not childish. It was unfinished. Those are entirely different conditions, and the crowd cannot tell them apart. Neither can you in the moment, with everyone looking at you. Criticism of an unfinished plan is criticism of a thing that does not yet exist. Ideas are capital. Here is the second reason, and it is a commercial one. A single sound idea is worth more than years of ordinary labor. Ideas are capital, the most portable capital there is, requiring no vault, no insurance, and no transport. And the man who lays his idea on the table for the entertainment of company is handing out capital as though it were tobacco. I have known men who described a plan one evening for the pleasure of being thought clever, and who watched a stranger execute that very plan within 18 months, and who spent the rest of their lives explaining to anyone who would listen that they had thought of it first. They had thought of it first. That is exactly the tragedy, and thinking of it first has never yet paid $1 to any man. The thing you are actually asking for, now I shall tell you why men explain their plans, and you will not enjoy hearing it. They are not seeking counsel. If they were seeking counsel, they would go to a man qualified to give it, and there are perhaps 2 such men available to you on any given subject. And neither of them is at that dinner table. They are seeking permission. They want a small advance payment of admiration to carry them until the work itself begins to pay. They want somebody to say, "That's a great idea," so they may feel for one evening like a man who has done something. And that payment is borrowed against the enterprise, and it is charged at a ruinous rate of interest, because a man who has been admired for the plan has already collected part of his wages, and a man who has collected part of his wages works with less urgency than a man who has collected none. Say nothing. Let the whole of the payment fall due at the end where it belongs. Third, and this one men volunteer without even being asked and hang themselves with it. Part 4, the third silence, the date. The date is not optional in this philosophy. A purpose without a date is a wish, and I have never known a wish to move so much as $1. The machinery cannot fill an order with no delivery time written on it. Set the date. Set it in ink. But a date announced becomes a stick placed into the hand of every man who hears it. What actually happens here is the sequence, and you may have lived it already. A man announces that by the 1st of the year, the thing will be done. He announces it in good faith, with his blood up, and it feels magnificent to say, the 1st of the year arrives. The thing is not done, and now he is answering questions. At every gathering, from every relative, with that particular tone. So how's the big plan coming? And he has 2 roads. He may defend a delay, which is humiliating and must be done repeatedly, at every family dinner, indefinitely. Or he may abandon the purpose altogether to save his face, declare it was never that serious, laugh it off, say he came to his senses. Thousands of men choose the second because it is quicker, and because the laughter stops immediately. They did not quit because the plan failed. They quit to stop the questions. The man with the throwaway blade. There was a man who carried an idea about with him for years. A razor blade so cheap that when it dulled, a man would simply throw it away and take a new one. He took it to metallurgists. He took it to men at the technical institutions. And they told him one after another, with perfect competence and perfect courtesy, that steel could not be made thin enough, hard enough, and cheap enough all at once. It was not a question of effort. It was a question of the nature of steel. He set himself dates, and he missed them. He missed them for years, 6 years by some accounts, and he was not a young man when he began. He did not surrender the purpose, and here is why he did not. He had staked his own resolve on the object, but he had not staked his reputation on the calendar in front of a gallery. His name was King C. Gillette, and the blade eventually went into the hand of nearly every man in the Western world. Now imagine that same man obliged to explain each missed month to a room of relatives. 6 years of that. Every Sunday, dinner for 6 years. I tell you plainly, he would have quit in the 2nd year, and he would have quit not from discouragement about the steel, but from exhaustion at the explaining. The distinction that matters, I must draw a line here, or a lazy man will take this as a license. The date is not softened, moved, or excused in your own private accounting. Never. It is held with iron. You do not grant yourself an extension because it would be more comfortable. That is drifting, and drifting has never been part of anything I have taught. The date is simply not submitted to a jury. Temporary defeat is a private matter between a man and his purpose. A date missed in silence is an adjustment made by a serious man revising his method. A date missed in public is a humiliation, and humiliation has made men quit things that were 3 feet from finished, which brings us to the fourth. And the fourth is where most fortunes are actually lost. Part 5. The fourth silence your defeats and your doubts. The moment a man says aloud to a friend, to a brother, to his wife, to a fellow at a bar, "I don't think this is going to work," he has performed the single most destructive act available to him under this entire philosophy. Understand precisely what has occurred in that sentence. He has taken his own doubt, he has given it his own voice, and he has delivered it directly into his own ear, which is the shortest and most reliable channel into his own subconscious mind that exists in nature. He has photographed his own failure in feeling and filed it as a settled fact. The crowd did not do that to him. His enemies did not do it. He did it himself in one sentence over a drink, and he called it being honest. It was not honest. It was a forecast delivered